speak briefly about his legislation that he's introduced regarding civil and criminal penalties. But before calling on him, let me call on Senator Murkowski for her statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for agreeing to hold this very important hearing this morning. As you have mentioned in your statement, our visit yesterday to the Gulf that Senator Whitehouse and Senator Landrieu and several others joined us on, I think was a very important visit, a very important trip to understand the impact of the Deepwater Horizon spill, understand better the consequences as that spill unfolds, as we see the impact to local residents, certainly to the marine environment. And I can assure you that what I saw yesterday certainly has reinforced my commitment to help make things right for all those whose lives and their livelihoods are being so vastly affected by this disaster. When it comes to the issue of liability associated with a major oil spill, I don't think that there's any state that's represented here on this committee that has a more direct experience, certainly a more immediate concern than the state of Alaska. When the Exxon Valdez tragedy occurred, it was a horrible incident at that time. It was a long and very sad part of Alaska's history. The litigation that followed was years in being resolved. The litigation over punitive damages literally took 2 decades to resolve. That and in and of itself was an absolute tragedy, and I am committed to ensuring that we don't see a similar situation unfold with this Gulf spill. Now, I wanted our committee to hold this hearing because there's been considerable discussion about the liability for the Deepwater Horizon spill and what part of that liability is limited or not limited. And I think there has been some mischaracterization out there that BP is only going to be responsible for $75 million of the spill. Mr. Chairman, if I really thought that the federal government was going to protect companies that have billions of dollars in assets and then require that they only pay $75 million regardless of the ultimate costs and damages for the spill, with taxpayers and spill victims that could possibly then be hung out to dry, I would be the absolute first to introduce legislation to correct what would clearly be a flawed system. But the reality is that the $75 million figure is drawn from just one provision on strict liability in OPA, the Oil Pollution Act. And it has nothing to do with the expressly unlimited liability provided for the cleanup costs. I think it's also important to recognize that it has nothing to do with the law's authorization for unlimited damages that are allowed under various state laws. And we recognize that not every state has unlimited strict liability, so we do need to take that into account. I think we have all stated around this table here in this committee room with the CEO of BP in front of us that we must hold and we will hold BP accountable. Mr. Chairman, you have stated and repeated again the affirmation that was made by BP that they will pay for and provide for all of those costs that are incurred as a result of this oil spill. When we were in the Gulf yesterday with Secretary Napolitano and Secretary Salazar, they too reiterated many, many times throughout the course of the day that BP will be responsible for the damages, for the costs associated with this spill. I think that we need to listen carefully and constructively on how we hold companies liable, how we incentivize stronger safety and environmental safeguards as it pertains to the $75 million liability cap. My own opinion is that we need to increase this liability cap to reflect both the inflation, the changing financial, and the risk portfolios that are associated with certain types of exploration. And I hope that as we consider some of the suggestions here today and going out into the future here, we consider how we make changes in ways that are not arbitrary. Right now there's a proposal out there that the liability cap needs to be $10 billion. Is that the right figure? I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it needs to be higher. Maybe it needs to be unlimited. Maybe it needs to be somewhere in between. But I think we need to take the time to ensure that we're building good policy on this. If Congress decides to impose a strict and direct liability of an additional $10 billion on top of the unlimited cleanup and the unlimited lawsuits that can be brought about against responsible parties in state courts, I think we have to consider what the potential consequences might be. Will there be jobs lost, particularly in the Gulf Coast? Our energy security perhaps weakened. We need to be considering these aspects. We've got an interest in making sure that the victims of this tragic spill, and God forbid that any future spills, are justly compensated in a fair and an expeditious manner. I think it is important that we figure out how we deal with this liability cap in increasing it, but again, I'm reserving judgment on what that appropriate figure might be until we've examined this in a way that Secretary Salazar asked us to do just last week. So I welcome the witnesses that we will have today. I welcome Senator Whitehouse for his perspective, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your leadership on this issue.
Well, thank you.